Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of JT Talks Jobs. This is the show that teaches you everything school didn't about job search, career growth, and specifically today, the idea of personal branding and telling your career story. I am so excited about this guest for several reasons. First of all, Chris Gronkowski is just an amazing individual. We met each other, ironically, by being on a show. Shout out to Trevor Houston and the Who You Know show. I can never say that right. We were both put on the show on the same day, and I immediately heard him and said, wow, this is a really interesting story. And as fate would have it, we were reconnected again and now co-host a segment on Clubhouse, the new social media app, every Wednesday at 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. And in order to prepare for that, got to know more and more about Chris's story. And it's amazing. And I cannot wait to unpack that story with you here today. We're talking about a pro NFL player who leaves and becomes an entrepreneur, and a very successful one at that. So we're going to be diving into that and how personal branding, social media, telling your career story has played a really big impact in his ability to make that successful transition. Because I'll tell you something, folks, a lot of athletes don't make the successful transition. That job is their dream job, and then it can be challenging after that. But Chris has just completely reinvented himself and continues to reinvent himself. And we're going to unpack that today. We're going to learn more about that. But I also, of course, want to bring him on because he's going to the Super Bowl tomorrow. So we've got to grill him on that. So enough about that. Let's bring him up here. Hey, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's so good to have you here. So first of all, you are crushing it on social media. We're going to talk about all the things that you're doing, especially on TikTok. But before we do that, can we just talk about how the heck did you get a ticket to the Super Bowl and how psyched are you to go down there tomorrow?
I am pumped. I was actually worried about getting a ticket because it's very limited this year. And with players, they can normally purchase 13 extra tickets. They get 2 free if you're in the Super Bowl, and then you're allowed to purchase 13 extra. They limited it down to 8 total. So I was like, I hope I make the short list. And I was able to get a ticket. My wife and I will be going. And my dad, somehow my dad always has connections. His college roommate has a suite at the Bucs, so he had that as well. And he was able to help us out with some tickets. So it's good to know people, right? The Who You Know show, great introduction for us. And it's been a pleasure getting to know you more as well. And thank you so much for having me on the show today.
Wow, we're really excited about that. So gearing up to go to the Super Bowl, you were just telling me before we got live that you're doing some social promotions around it. Can you tell us the one that you just dropped that's probably going to get picked up by ESPN?
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. My brother has these Lombardi trophies, and they're actually fake, but he's like the only one that has them for some reason. But they look identical. They look real. And I was down there last year. I made a post of me just doing some curls with these trophies, and I made it look heavy, right? But they weigh maybe like 3-4 pounds, and I'm just sitting there cranking it out. And I posted that up, and the next thing I know, it's on ESPN. It's on SportsCenter. It's being posted everywhere. I'm like, no way. And everyone thought it was a real trophy, so they were flipping out about it. I was getting all kinds of messages like, don't dent it like your brother did. And it was pretty funny, but I just threw up the, kind of that throwback Thursday to get everyone excited again for the Super Bowl.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. So you're going to get to take some time off and enjoy it, watch it instead of, getting yourself pummeled. By the way, I broke ribs this week for the first time in my life. I slipped and fell. And now I understand what you pro athletes go through when you break ribs. It hurts. Can I just say? Really hurts. It's not fun. Yeah, really, really hard. But let's talk a little bit about this because I want to talk about what made you decide to go into football. I mean, like so many of your brothers are in, pro football, but I think a lot of people don't realize you're older than Rob. You were there first. So let's walk everybody through your career story in terms of getting into the NFL, being in the NFL, and then eventually making the move to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so I'm the shortest in the family at 6'2", so I'm always looked at as the younger brother. But football, it really wasn't this thing where we were this big football family growing up. We grew up in Buffalo, New York. It was really more about hockey. Hockey and baseball is what we started with, and we loved the game. I loved hockey so much, but there's really no way to get to that next level. I mean, there is, but it's very, very difficult. You're competing against the whole world. There's limited spots, and every year, you kind of had to give up every other sport to play hockey only. And we just weren't feeling it. We wanted to play every sport. We had friends on every team. We loved kind of switching it up, and we played all the sports growing up. So when we got to high school, that's when we started playing football for the first time. And the only reason I played was because my older brother Dan was this beast. He was like 6'6", 235, and just naturally, I mean, he was basically forced to play football, right? He had no other option when you're that big. So he went out, he ended up being the starting quarterback, and it was like the coolest thing ever. And so I saw him playing, and I immediately had to play. I didn't really know the game well. My first year, I remember I was awful. Like I was trash my first year, and just got better and better, and kind of figured out the game and learned it a little bit more. And we were always just intense. We grew up just competing. So once we got out there and kind of learned the game a little bit, we picked it up fast, and it was a lot of fun. And you're allowed to hit people. You're allowed to legally, I guess, hit people. And, that was cool because we loved getting in fights growing up, and we battled all the time. And now it was okay to do so. So I went on, and from high school, I wasn't really heavily recruited. Buffalo, New York's actually a hard spot to get a scholarship out of.
Yeah.
People don't realize this. New York's a huge state.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the entire state, I think there was like 10 Division I football players compared to a state like Florida where there was like 300, or Texas like 350 guys, and we're kind of just fighting for 10 spots because it just wasn't big. No scouts really came up there, and the talent wasn't necessarily always there as well. So I was going to the Ivy League. I was accepted into the Wharton Business School. My dad was so pumped. He's like, I finally got a son that's going Ivy League, and he was telling everyone. And the same time, I was definitely pumped to go, but I knew it was going to cost a lot of money. At that time, there's no scholarships. You couldn't get an academic or just a scholarship for football either. So I knew it was going to be like $50K a year coming out of school there, and I was going to be like $200K in debt. So I was pretty pumped for the opportunity, but at the same time, I wanted to compete at the highest level, and I was really hoping for a scholarship. So pretty cool thing happened at that point. The University of Maryland, where my older brother Dan was at, he got a D1 scholarship. He was doing well. He was really good with his grades, and they were about to go on academic probation. So the last minute, they lost a bunch of running backs, and they had a couple guys on the team currently that were starting to go into this territory where they might get kicked off the team. So they brought me in at the last minute, gave me a full scholarship, and said, you better have a 4.0 and you better help us boost our grades up so we don't go on probation. So I tell people all the time, like, hey, it's about grades too. It's not just being an athlete. If you can't pass those SATs, ACTs, you don't have that GPA, you're not going to get there. So take care of the schoolwork as well. And that helps you because it helps with the playbook. It helps with everything as well. So just learn it now and learn how to be good at both, because you're never going to get to that next level unless you do. So I was able to get that scholarship. I ended up transferring after the first 2 seasons to the University of Arizona, and I played with my brother Rob. And it was this opportunity where I went to Maryland. I never really felt like I belonged there. I never really felt like they recruited me. They kind of just gave me this last-minute offer, and it was crazy because at that time, my brother Rob was the biggest scout in the nation. My brother Dan and I were both at Maryland. They kind of just assumed he was going to come. So they bring him in on this whole recruiting trip. My dad's there, and the head coach sits there and tells my brother and my dad how great they love, my brother Dan, and he's so amazing and all this. And he's like, but your brother Chris probably will never play for me. And it all came down to like this one time in practice where I got hurt, and I couldn't do the goal line drills for that day, so we had to cancel it. He got all mad at me and just came down on it. So I had to make a decision at that point to go for a different opportunity, and I ended up transferring, going with Rob, and had to sit out a year. Ended up playing my junior year with my brother, and it was the greatest year ever. Just being able to play alongside your brother, block with him, run routes, catch touchdowns. It was just it was an amazing year, and we just pushed each other so much because there's no one that you want to impress more than your own brother, right? You want to go in the film room after and be like, hey, bro, watch this play coming up. I'm about to just level this guy. So amazing year. And after that, just my brother ended up getting hurt. I played my senior year, and then we both went into the draft together. So I went undrafted. He got drafted second round, and I had this one opportunity to just do all I could as an undrafted free agent to make a team. So I ended up making it that year with the Dallas Cowboys, and went on to play with 2 other teams as well.
That's amazing. So first of all, let's just talk about, in every situation, you assess the opportunity and didn't necessarily say, no, I have to hold on to this path. You really looked at it and said, this isn't serving me. I need to switch gears and I need to move on. And I think that's one aspect, folks, as you heard Chris tell his story, when you're out telling your own career story, it's very important that you look back and connect the dots like that. We want to understand your mindset and what made those decisions. And that helps us understand so logically why you got to where you are and how you, even though, like you said, you weren't drafted, you busted yourself and through the playing and the help of your brothers and leveling up, as you've told us, into getting into that spot. But at some point you decide, no, I'm not going to stay with the NFL, right? It's been a good run. So talk us through that, because that was a big decision, I'm sure, in your life to not keep pushing forward. This is something you essentially had spent 8 years focused on. So that's not a decision you make lightly.
Yeah, that's the toughest transition for most players. I mean, you see that too with military as well. It's very similar where that is your identity. That's all you know. That's all you've done. You know nothing outside of that. And once you leave, you're lost. That especially because you have that schedule and you're on it. People are telling you what to do. You have to be somewhere all the time, and then you have this freedom, and you have nothing. You have no team. You're just on your own, and you feel lonely as well. So a lot of guys really, really struggle with it, and then they struggle because you're making a lot of money per week. And now you're trying to go to find a new career where you're getting paid what you might make in a week for the entire year. So just kind of like this ego thing really stops guys from getting jobs as well and starting their next career because they just won't accept the lower payment. So it was tough. It's definitely tough. I got super, super lucky. For me, I went to 3 teams in 3 years. My wife, she was with me the whole time, and every time we moved, she had to find a new job. Yeah. She had to go out and apply and do interviews. And by the 3rd move, she was like, I am not doing this anymore. Like, I need to just find a way to work from home. And so she did. And it started with just something she loved. Her aunt bought her a hand-painted wine glass, and she thought it was really cool. And she's like, I could probably do this too. So she started hand-painting wine glasses. She was selling them on the Etsy platform, and all of a sudden, they just kept selling, and she couldn't keep up with it because it took so long to hand paint each one. So she had to start doing vinyl to kind of scale it a little bit. And then at that time, she still couldn't keep up. So I ended my first contract after 3 years with the Broncos. I was looking for a new team. I kind of started researching it and realized that there was just a huge opportunity there. It wasn't something I ever thought I would do. I never thought I was going to go into like a personalization company and do wedding gifts and Valentine's Day gifts and all this stuff, but it just looked like an amazing opportunity. So I spent a lot of time doing it, helped her build it a little bit. I signed with the San Diego Chargers. I ended up going there for about 6 months, and I got hurt in camp. At that point, once you get hurt in camp, you're considered damaged goods to the NFL. So they released me with what they call an injury settlement. They paid me out for as many weeks as they thought I would be hurt for. So for me, that was about 4 weeks of that time. I took it because it went towards what they call accredited season, where if you play for at least 3 years, you then get all the retirement benefits. So you get the 401k, the pensions, the healthcare benefits, everything that's really going to help you down the line, you get after that. And then it piles on for each year. So by taking the injury settlement, I already had 3 years. It gave me a 4th year. And then it really gave me this opportunity to kind of try to figure out what I wanted to do next. My 3 to 4 week injury ended up being like 3 months. So they got me pretty good on that, but they have to pay for the rehab and they take care of all of that. But I did try to come back, and I did all the rehab, and I went to a tryout, and I tore my hamstring. I completely ruptured it, ripped it off. And at that point, it was either have surgery and reattach it, or you can let it scar down and just live life like a normal person that doesn't have to run sprints and hit people all day. So I had to make just a decision at that point, and I had this amazing opportunity with my wife. So it made it easy for me. Most people struggle. I had this business to go right into. It had more work than I could handle. I was working 80 hours a week out of the house, and it really took all my time. So I didn't even really think about sports as much. I missed it, but I was so consumed with my new venture that it really wasn't a big deal to me. So the injury ended up being almost this blessing in disguise.
Right. But you still could have said, no, I've come this far. I'm going to keep trying. I think when you're in that microcosm, and I think we've all been there, when you're in a work environment where everybody's kind of striving at the same thing and there's no other points of view, it can be really hard to make that decision to step away. I remember I got called one time. They wanted me to come do some coaching with the NBA. And on this call, they told me the average tenure in the NBA is 2 years.
Yep.
And those guys spend 18 years, from out of the womb, right? They're thinking basketball their whole lives. 2 years and it's over. And the money's gone and the fame's gone and they have no idea what they want to do next. And that was the first time I ever heard how hard it is for athletes. And I love that you brought up the military aspect, because we do a work with a lot of ex-military, and they too struggle when you've been in that environment where everybody's thinking the same way. And now you've got to suddenly all alone figure out a new path. And I don't think people transition as well as you did. I think it's interesting that as fate had it, you were watching the entrepreneurship formulate with your wife's business and helping with that, so that at least you started to see another path or another way. But there was also a risk there, Chris. There was you were this famous football player, and now you're going off to be an entrepreneur. I mean, there was a risk that wouldn't succeed. What went through your mind with that? Like, how, that can be the reason that most people don't go forward with another game plan, because they don't want to fail, because they think, well, I'm just coming off the biggest success of my life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I was super conservative, and it's funny because my wife's the exact opposite. So, I had researched like all the commercial grade lasers and all that, and I had to pick out the perfect one. And before I even did, it was already at my door. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you are killing me. But what it did for me was it forced me to just figure it out and get better and figure out the business, because it would have took me a long time to make a decision like that. So we almost became the perfect duo for each other, where I was so conservative and she was just like, no, we're doing it. We're spending it. Let's put the money in. And it ended up being perfect. So I probably would have took a lot longer to get to where we got to if it was just me, because I was very timid about doing that. So I see where it comes from, and I got lucky again with my wife just really being a go-getter and really going after it.
I love that. So first of all, I love that part of your story, because I've heard in several cases you've really talked about your wife and her role and how you two are partners. And side note, I have that same thing with my husband. I definitely couldn't do what I do today if I didn't have somebody who was so incredibly supportive. But not everybody's that lucky. And so I think what everyone should take away today is that if you're making a transition like this and you don't have that person in your life, you need to go find somebody. You've got to find a mentor, an advisor, a coach, just somebody to buddy up with. Because as you pointed out, I think we get there a lot faster when we have that yin and yang, when we have that person that can push us past our comfort zone or our hesitation, that can see the things that we can't see in ourselves. So I love that advice. So let's get into it, because you and your wife, she starts a super successful business. You help her, and together you build that. Then you decide it's not enough. So you decide to start Ice Shaker. And by the way, folks, I am obsessed. Like, you kind of assume, I'm going to give it to you straight. You kind of assume, oh yeah, I'm going to get this, this thing. It's going to be nice. This thing is insane. It's got levels inside to pre-mix. It does not leak. I make this thing called morning mud in this thing, and you can shake the heck out of it with my ice. It stays cold. I put tea in it the other day. I woke up the next morning. The tea was still hot. I had made tea the night before. Like, this thing is insane. So, okay, we got to talk about how you came up with the idea for this.
Yeah, for sure. So I was about 5 years into my wife's business, and really I didn't need to do anything else. It was super successful. It was making more than my NFL career was making. So I'm like, there was really no reason to do it. But at the end of the day, it was her passion. She loved it. It wasn't mine. I never even told people what I was doing. I didn't go back to my NFL teammates and say, hey, I have this cool personalization company. I'll make your wedding gifts for you. I just didn't tell anyone. I didn't use social. I did nothing to promote it at all, because it just wasn't really me. It wasn't really my brand. I was all about health and fitness and love sports. So I wanted to find a way to get into it. And it all came to me just a day at the gym, something I loved doing. I was there. It was hot, super hot in Texas, over 100 degrees. And I went home. I grabbed the same plastic shaker that had been around for 20 years. And I had about 100 of them stacked in my damn cabinet. And I'm like, all right, this thing's awful. It leaks. It was dripping sweat everywhere. I took a sip of it. It was warm. It tasted awful. And I'm like, there's got to be something better out there. And at that time, there was a bunch of insulated bottles on the market. So it wasn't like the technology wasn't there, but just no one had something that you can easily mix and blend and would keep your drink cold and wouldn't absorb the odor. So I tried buying another cup, and it had like the little tiny spout. I'm trying to use a funnel and dump like my protein in it and stuff. And it was impossible to clean. And at that point, I just said, hey, I'm going to make the best bottle that I can. And it wouldn't be just for the gym. It would be all day, every day, because I was so simple with everything I did. I just wanted one cup. At the end of the day, I wanted one cup in the sink. Like, I didn't want to do the dishes twice a week. And I was like, I just want one thing I can use all day, every day. So that was the idea at that time. So went out, and it sounds so simple, just take an insulated cup and put a shaker top on it, right? it was like 20 prototypes later, and just months and months, and just so much longer than you think it's going to be. And I finally got my first 10,000 bottles, and I had to carry them up in this room here. This is where they're actually stored. When we first got them, we didn't have a storefront or anything, so they were in the upstairs of my house. And it's funny because out of all the prototypes we did, we never had an issue with the pop top. So the actual, I'll grab this one, but this pop top, it snaps down on the bottle, so it never leaked. And we got the new samples, and I went like this with the first bottle, and it just all poured out of it. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So our first 10,000, what ended up happening was these pop tops here are made in, I guess, 2 at a time. And one of the two, for whatever reason, on the mold, the tooling just got messed up. So you couldn't tell the difference between them, but it didn't seal. So right out the gate, we had to change out all the lids on the first 10,000 bottles before we could ship them out. So people ask how you be successful as an entrepreneur. The first thing I say is you better be passionate about it, because if you're not, something like that is going to completely stop you in your path right out of the gate. I just absolutely loved it. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And I didn't mind coming up after work every day for hours, sitting here changing out the lids, because I was just so passionate about what I was doing.
I love that you're bringing that up. We talk about intrinsic motivation here a ton, and I think people don't understand that. That's another aspect of your story all the way through. From the moment we started talking, you've just talked about repeatedly putting in the time, putting in the effort, not giving up, figuring it out, having that grit, having that perseverance. It's like a theme with you. I'm sure growing up, there's probably a storyline there, in the family dynamic and competing with brothers, but there's still a mentality that you have to have. And I think it's important, folks, you have to tell your intrinsic motivation and the grit that you have to do what you're doing. Because if you want people to buy into your personal brand, like they're buying into Chris's, they know he's the real deal. He's put everything into this thing. It's not somebody else did it for him. You were able to tell the story. I did the prototypes. This happened with the first 10,000. I think you've been through 3 warehouses. I think I saw that on social media somewhere, right? I mean, you've lived every step of the growth of the company.
Absolutely. And I did pretty much everything as well. I mean, if you go on our website now, it was built by me. So I didn't know how to build a website. I didn't know how to use Photoshop. I didn't know how to do anything. I didn't know how to laser engrave. It's just stuff that I learned on my own for the most part. And I think that's a huge asset that people just don't really do anymore. Things come to them so easy now, and the internet's so easy to access, and people just don't go and just figure out things on their own anymore. But yeah, I've done it all, from packing, shipping, all the Facebook ads. And I'm finally to the point now where it was hurting us instead of helping us, because I could only do so much. That's when my NFL and everything I learned there, and teamwork really came into play for us, was when we got to that point where I had to start building a team now. So a lot of it I have started to offload and really just pass it on to great people that can handle the responsibility, and they're running with it. And it's really exciting to see.
It's so important you say that. So first of all, the fact that you didn't let your ego get the best of you. Hey, I was an NFL player. I should be able to outsource this or build this company. Nothing was beneath you, right? You just had this natural curiosity to learn the business, which now makes you so well informed as you hire people. You know what to expect of these employees because you did the job yourself. And I think that's a really important part of this story. You've talked about that. I've seen a lot on social media, which leads me to the next piece, because you have embraced social media like very few that I've seen. And the storytelling that you do about fitness, about being, in the NFL, about running the business, about life, you are super transparent. And I would say that's one of the reasons why you just have a ridiculous following, right? Like you've probably broken are you close to over 500,000 on TikTok alone? And you just got on the thing like 4 months ago?
Yeah. So I think I'm at 425, but it's
amazing. Right.
Amazing engagement is what it is. And just, I love it. I love it.
What got you comfortable with this idea of, I'm just going to start talking. I'm just going to start revealing things and sharing and engaging and responding and answering questions? Because again, there's a lot of people in your position that would think that would be beneath them, or would feel like, oh, that's not what people expect of me. But you got over that right quick, and it's really played to your advantage. So talk us through that.
Yeah. So this is a good story. So I have a podcast called Gronked Up, and I had a kid come on, and he was suggested to me, and He was this TikTok superstar, right? And I'm like, oh, I gotta have him on because TikTok was blowing up, and I didn't really know much about it. So he came on and he told his story. He went to college for a semester. He dropped out. He was a nobody. He got on TikTok and he kind of just found who he was, and he started telling his story and started bringing a bunch of value to people, and it took off. So he had like 650,000 followers, and he looked at my page and goes, "Man, you have like 10,000." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. Like it just doesn't work for me. Like TikTok's not really my thing." And he threw this challenge at me. He's like, "Why? All right, this is it." He's like, "You have so much more to share than me. You've done so many cool things. You have so much knowledge that nobody else knows about. Why don't you start telling it?" And he said, just post once a day. Just post once a day, something that you think no one else knows that might bring them value. So I'm like, all right, man, I'll try it. So I got on there and I wasn't super comfortable with just talking directly to the camera. Like it just wasn't, my thing. I don't think anyone really is at first. Yeah. I just had to do it. So I thought of a cool story and I went on there and I told that story. I think it was one about just kind of the behind the scenes of Shark Tank, I think is what I started with. There might have been like a Family Feud that we were on, but I saw immediately that when I talk directly to the camera and I talk to people and I share great value and insights that they've never heard, they really engaged with it. So first couple of videos did pretty good. And then I just learned each time I posted what really worked well and just kept building and building and building on it. So within 30 days, I went back to him. I'm like, "Hey man, you were right." So in 30 days, I went from 10,000 and I did post on TikTok. I probably had at least over 50 posts before this too. So it wasn't like I wasn't on the platform. I was on it. It wasn't working. And so, and it wasn't like this thing where it was my name because people were like, "Man, it's your name. Like obviously you're going to get a ton of followers and engagement." I had 50 posts and I don't think any of them got over 5,000 views on them. They weren't that good. I mean, it was more of an Instagram style. I wasn't really connecting, engaging with people. And when I changed it all up and I started doing what he said and recommended, it just exploded. So I went from that 10,000 to I think it was about 350,000 in 30 days, which was amazing to see it. The videos reached over 50 million people. And all of a sudden, even though I wasn't talking about business at all, every time I got on a call, we ended up talking about TikTok.
Yep.
I saw one of my videos.
It's incredible. And I mean, I'm obsessed with TikTok. I think this ability to provide value, you said that a couple times. That's the best part about it for me, is just the ability to give people value and change their lives and then have them come back and comment on it and dialogue with them. There hasn't been a platform that's been able to do that for us. I love the evolution. But I want to talk about how it's enabled you, again, to expand on your story, because we had a really cool discussion on Clubhouse yesterday about this. I always say brand or be branded. And I think there are times a lot of people are afraid to go out and start to tell their story because they're afraid of the haters. They're afraid of the trolls, which are very real, right? People being snarky and nasty. And you and I both talked about how that shifted for us once we just got out there, we were real, and when necessary, address these folks. So talk everybody through that, because you've dealt with some of that, right? And quickly we're able to get rid of it using some of these techniques.
Yeah, I love how you said brand or be branded, because if you think about it, if you saw me, if you just heard of me but never knew anything about me, the initial reaction is going to be, "Hey, he's some dumb football player," right? That's going to be one of the first things. He made a living off of his brother being famous is going to be the next thing. And these are all the comments that I saw immediately. Like the first couple of posts were, these guys are idiots. I mean, they see my brother and they could, they call him an idiot because he likes to have fun and has a good time or whatever it is. Or you kind of just get the stigma that you're a dumb jock. So the first couple of comments were exactly that. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about, blah, blah, blah. He just made a living off his brother. And then as I kept posting and I started telling my story, everything completely changed and everyone started jumping on board. And then it's kind of like we talked about the other day, when people did say that stuff, my followers and the people that were engaging and I was engaging with would write back to them and just crush them and be like, "Hey, maybe you should go learn a little bit more about Chris, because that isn't the truth at all." That would be comment after comment after comment. And they would just get blasted if they tried to sit there and talk trash. So it was amazing to see. But the whole brand or be branded thing that's huge. Yeah. I didn't realize that when I started it. And when you said that, that really clicked with me, because I was branded as, a dumb jock. I was branded as Gronk's brother, or, making a living off my brother. And then once I told my story, everything is completely changed now. And I just get nonstop comments now. I don't tell my brother this, but everyone's like, this is the best Gronk. This is the best Gronk. And they just sit there and hammer it. And it's because I engage with people, and I'm not saying that it's something that my brother's doing wrong. He just can't. I mean, he can't, at least not at that level with what he's doing and how busy he is. So people just, what it comes down to is they just really appreciate when people engage with them.
Not now, but there will come a time when he'll want to transition too. And how lucky will he be that he has a brother that's, you figured this all out for yourself. So they're all going to be knocking on your door for tips on how to do this. But I'm with you, that the engagement and the ability to respond to people is huge in this platform. And people seem to think that it's super time sensitive and consuming. You can't answer everyone, but at least these tools have been built in a way that you can engage a lot more than I think other platforms, which is really nice, so that people know, hey, this is me in the feed. This is me responding in the feed. I know I really enjoyed that. And again, I love controlling the message. People need to know your story, and you just keep creating value and keep telling your story. And the other thing I think people ask, and I want to ask this one more question, and then we have so many questions from the audience that we have to start taking them, just so you know. But the people say, well, I don't have much to say. Right? Like, I'm going to run out of stuff to say. I've never had that problem. And based on what I've seen for you, you do not have that problem. So where's your continuous inspiration coming for more content?
It's coming from my audience is where I get it from.
Yeah.
I'd had a podcast with another guy. He calls himself the brand doctor. He said the same thing. He said, when you run out of content, ask a question. Yeah. And then use that to make more content, because that's what people want to hear. So just keep doing that. And TikTok's been amazing because I just get nonstop questions asked, and all I'm doing is answering them. And then when I do want to change the narrative, it's very easy for me to do as well. If it's like right now, it's NFL time for sure. I mean, it's Super Bowl time. So everything I'm posting right now is geared towards the NFL. But once this ends, I'm going to push it towards more business stuff. I think there's a lot of value there. I think a lot of the behind the scenes Shark Tank stuff is really cool as well. And so I'll easily change that narrative just with one post. And then I'll ask the question, what else do you guys want to see? What else do you want to know about business? What else interests you? And it will just be nonstop questions that come in from that. So that's how I do it. Every once in a while, I'll even do stuff like I'll go on Google and just type in like trending, or you'll see like Yahoo trending, stuff like that. So that's always a really good source as well. But if you just start typing in the first couple words, like say like NFL at Google, it's going to tell you what every single person is searching for. And it will give you a lot of cool things to talk about as well. And you'll see some stuff that just, for me, I like to post recipes. So I'll see some stuff come up, like certain foods at certain times of the year just explode. And I'll jump on that because it's just a great topic to hit on and bring people value when they're looking for it as well. So there's all kinds of resources. I mean, it's never ending.
It's never ending.
Where you can pull stuff from. And a lot of it's too is just what you're passionate about as well. If you're passionate about it,
it's your point of view. Absolutely. And something we were talking about yesterday, you are all about value, and I would say vibe. I think there's a vibe to you that you're not acting like a know-it-all and that you're right, or you just love to tell stories about what's happened, share your perspective. Certainly, you're very credible in the fitness industry because you've worked really hard at that. So you share some stuff there. But even when I see you share stuff, there's just a vibe that comes off of, hey, this is what works for me. This is how I do it. Which I think is really appealing. And I'm assuming that was intentional, but I mean, you're going for that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think this was definitely a struggle for me, and I think it is for everyone, but I think there's a line between being credible and bragging.
Yeah.
So I see so many people go on there and it's just straight bragging, like, hey, look at my house, look at my car, look at my muscles, all that. And it's like, I get it to some point because you have to be credible and you have to give them something to make you legit. But at the same time, I hate coming off as, the cocky know-it-all. So I think there's a fine line there. And I think if you do it the right way, it works. So that's how I see it. I hate being the guy that goes on there and just look at my house and look at my car, like look at all the money. That's not me. And I hate doing it. But at some point you have to kind of build that in a little bit without being cocky or braggy about it.
Right. And I think you find your way, and you certainly have found your way. It's amazing. All right. We're going to try to take as many questions as we can, folks. So you know the deal. If you have a question, you can pop it in the chat there, but don't be upset if we can't answer them all because there's way too many. And I put on my reading glasses for this one. All right. So first question is from Anna over on YouTube. She said, what is the one question you would both recommend job candidates ask startups to ensure they're working with the right entrepreneurial leadership team and the right opportunities. Ooh, I love this question. So what would you ask to make sure that it was the right kind of place for you if you were job seeking?
Oh, that's a tough one. I would say, do you take suggestions from employees? I think that's a good question, because in a startup, it's never going to be figured out. It's never going to be this perfect system yet, right? And so I've learned so much from my employees because it just wasn't right yet. So I reach out to them and I say, hey, what can we fix? What can we make better? And if you're in a startup where they won't do that, they won't take suggestions, I think that it's going to really hurt the company in the long run. So I think that's a good question to ask. And I would appreciate that question if someone asked me it.
I love it. I would also add in, I'd want to know, tell me about the last successful hire you've had. What do you think made them successful for you as the owner? Because I want to hear what that entrepreneur is valuing in terms of skill sets. You know, if they're telling me, oh, they were there 80 hours a week and spent all their weekends here, well, I'm not sure that's the right place for me. I'm not a slacker, but I kind of want to see what they value. Is it, you know, quality, or is it, you know, just time, or what? So could be revealing there. All right, Carol over on YouTube says, all this talk about personal brand, I really don't follow what it means. Is there another way you can explain it? I'm sure when you first heard personal branding, it's kind of a turnoff. It's kind of gotten a bad rap. I call it reputation management. Do you have any other terms you use for it so people can, you know, get a sense of it?
Yeah, I see what she means by saying that it gets a kind of a bad rap, or kind of, because it feels like you're selling yourself, right?
Right.
Like you're trying to sell something, and I understand that. I hated trying to be sold as well. So yeah, I like what you said. I wouldn't call it personal branding, more of just telling your story.
Yeah.
Connecting and networking with people.
And that's why we were saying to folks, it's about your career story. It's about your reputation. And when we say brand or be branded, we're telling you to own your story, or someone else is going to make assumptions about you. And it happens to everyone. So you want to own that. Suzanne on LinkedIn is asking, Chris, what did you notice was the mindset shift that assisted you in making the change and the decision factor that you were in alignment with that decision? So when you said, all right, I'm going to give up football, I'm going to move into entrepreneurship, what was going through your mind? How did you do that positively? I think is what she's asking.
Oh, yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. For me, it was something where I couldn't even think about it, really. I was just so busy and I went right into it. So I got lucky with that. So my mindset with everything has always just been, once I get into it, I'm going to go as hard as I can and make the best out of it. So the second I transitioned over, that was it. That was immediately, hey, this is the next thing. I'm going all out. I'm going to put it all on the line. I'm going to do everything I can to make this successful.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. There's a ton of science, neuroscience that says that, 2% of our body mass is our brain, but it burns 25% of our calories. So I love what you said, because if you're going to sit there and agonize over a decision, you're wasting valuable energy. Whereas you said, no, I'm done with that decision. So now let's go do it. And you put all of that energy in that thought process. Makes total sense. All right. Paige says, is there another way to build your brand, Chris, without becoming tied to social media, or at least not so much Facebook and Instagram? I think a ton of people are done with Facebook and Instagram. I'm hearing every day about people pulling themselves off them. Yeah. Do you think you can be successful in building a business or a brand without social media though?
Without social, so I would say I agree without Facebook and Instagram. It's very, very hard to build on them, and it's frustrating, right?
It is.
At this point, they're not going to push your stuff out. Right. So you're pretty much paying for it if you want to get your name in front of people. I know Reels is pushing a little bit, but still, it's so hard. It's hard for me to grow on there. So I would say go to a platform that's more friendly. Join groups. I think that's big. Get to a Facebook group that is something that you're passionate about, and that's huge. Or Clubhouse, the same thing. So jump on there and find a group of people that you want to engage with, that you want to network with, that you have similar passions with. I think that's a great way to get out there as well and tell your story and start building that way. But TikTok's huge because it pushes organically. Yeah. You're going to get that. So as long as you're bringing value and good content, they're going to push it. It doesn't matter if you have 0 followers or you have 1 million. If your video is good, they're pushing it. If your video sucks and you have 1 million followers, it's not going to go anywhere either. So that's why I love the platform. It just constantly makes you get better and push out actual quality content that people can use. So
it really does. Hold you accountable.
Yes. Without social media, it's definitely harder, but you can go to groups. I know my dad does it. He goes to groups where he works on his public speaking. Toastmasters, I believe is what it's called. But there's all kinds of groups that you could join as well and really get out there and build your brand. And you don't have to have this ginormous following or a huge network. You just need to know a lot of good people that can help you out. And that's it. I mean, it could be 50 people, and that's all you really need to be successful.
I'm really glad you said that, because I think not everyone should have a big platform and feel like they have to have this big presence on, say, TikTok or social media. It's not for everyone, but you still have to have that network. You still have to have people who know what you're about, that you can provide value to, so that you can build those relationships. We always say at Work It Daily, your network is your net worth, and it's the quality of that network and the level of engagement you have. So I love that you said that, because you could still be highly effective with 50 people that you were super engaged with, versus 5 million. Great stuff. All right. Rose wants to know on LinkedIn, Chris, how do you use discipline in your career, your football career, to market your business? Are there any key things that you used technique-wise that you absolutely carried over to entrepreneurship?
It's so similar. It's crazy. It really is. I mean, as an entrepreneur, it's a lot of hard work. It's long days. It's a grind. I think one thing I learned is more of being a college athlete was, just scheduling stuff, just having an effective schedule, because I was so busy in college. It was a full-time student, full-time athlete. And to be able to do all that and fit it in, you have to have some kind of game plan, and you have to be able to figure it out if you want to be successful in both. So I think that carried over a lot. I think the biggest thing for me was like actually starting to put stuff on a calendar once I became an entrepreneur, because you forget stuff pretty quick and there's so much going on. And then the last thing for sure was teamwork. And this took me a little longer to realize, but you have this amazing structure in the NFL, and they built out this amazing atmosphere, and everyone's on the same page. You're there for one reason, and that's to win games, to win a Super Bowl. But when you get in the business world, it is completely different. Everyone's there for different reasons for the most part. Some people are there just to get a paycheck. Everyone's not there to win. Everyone's not on the same page. So I had to really figure out how to build an amazing team and bring that teamwork in and get everyone on the same page like we were in the locker room. And that was huge once that really clicked with me. And great teams win championships, and you have to figure out how to build that team. And once I did, it's taken off for us, and it's been fun to see.
Oh, amen. I have to say, I think as entrepreneurs, we think we're supposed to be able to figure it all out and do it all ourselves. And the moment you have that aha moment and you build a great team, you 10x your business. It's incredible how much it changes. All right, we have a comment from Dave. He just said, this guy's writing his own narrative, which is tremendous. I love his story. So Chris, you got a big fan in Dave.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Dave.
Paige is asking a cool question. And folks, I just want to remind you, we haven't even mentioned it. It's iceshaker.com. Chris's business is iceshaker.com. I am not kidding you. He is, I'm not, some kind of endorser. I'm just telling you, this thing absolutely rocks. It's unbelievable. But Paige asked an interesting question. She said, Chris, walk us through the difference between personal branding and a personally branded product. So you must see that in the NFL, endorsing versus owning your own thing. Why didn't you just endorse a product as opposed to go down this really difficult route of building your own?
Yeah, and that's a great option for players. But for the most part, if you're not a really big name, you don't get those deals. So my brother gets them, but I sure didn't get those type of deals. That's for sure. So I had to take the other path. There was really no option for me to really endorse a brand and make a living off of it. So it is a good strategy if you're a bigger player and you can do it. But if you want long-term, and you see guys like LeBron was big on this, he would not endorse a product unless he got some kind of share in it, which was really cool to see, because he built something that's going to last so much longer than his playing career. It's going to last him forever. And so that's what I always suggest players to try to do. I try to push my brother into it, but it's so easy just to, hey, just let me get the cash up front and move on, when the contract ends. So the personal brand, it's who you really are. And, when you're endorsing a product, that's really not always you. You're getting paid for it, and it's not necessarily everything that you believe in.
That's such a good point. You really have to do your research too, right? Because you're on the hook once you put your name with that long term. So you really want to feel like it's well represented, well run, that sort of thing too. So there's a lot of research there, and they may not always reveal that stuff to you when they're trying to get you to endorse. So let's flip to the other side, because the question we're getting asked here is, this makes a ton of sense, authenticity and adding value, but how do you start this if you're not famous or already an expert in something? And I think this is a very interesting question, because at one point you and I were talking about this and you said it's not always great to come from, a famous family, so to speak, right? Or, being in the NFL and having this expertise. It doesn't necessarily give you all sorts of advantages. There are some disadvantages to it, don't you think?
Yeah, there's some. There's some, kind of just the negative connotations that come with it. But I mean, I've heard them all. That's for sure, especially when I first started. But if you're not an expert in it, you just build and build and build, and you keep telling your story, and people start listening. And that's kind of how it was for me as well. I mean, really, even though I was a player, I wasn't the best. Like, I'm not like the prime example of who they should be asking these questions to. So I got more and more momentum, and people trusted me more and more as I posted more. You just have to start, and then you'll get better as well as you go.
That totally makes sense. And that leads into another question we're getting. When you're thinking about how you want to start to push this content out, I know you said that you just started doing it and then you got some feedback, but how do you frame it now? So how do you start to figure out themes of content that you want to push out so that people can take their big, long career story and start to break it down into things like a 60-second TikTok? Do you have any tips on that?
So what I did was I sat back and I said, how can I bring value to people? And then I broke it down into categories. And it was what I was passionate about and what I was knowledgeable in. And then I would kind of slice that up, and then I would start posting it. I always had a reason why I was posting it. I wanted someone to learn something or get some kind of emotion from it or act upon it. And if that wasn't there, then I just started cutting it. It didn't do anything for anyone, then why was I posting it? And so that's kind of when everything really changed, and when I started actually putting some planning behind it. And I'm still not great at it, that's for sure. But every time you post, there should be some kind of call to action. There should be something that you want people to do or feel. And once you start doing that, you'll see people start engaging, and then you have to engage back. This isn't a one-way street. If you want to build a following, you want to build a network, you also have to put the work in, and you have to engage with them, or else they're not going to engage with you anymore. So it is a two-way street on social media as well.
I totally agree. And I'll just say this, certainly if you have tons of money and you can throw it at advertising, you can take that less engagement route, right? Produce commercials and do all these things. But for me, social media has been a very cost-effective way to build brand, but also just more enjoyable. I mean, I think you genuinely have to want to engage with people, engage with your audience, and get that feedback. So if that's not something that appeals to you, then you probably shouldn't do this route, because you're not going to enjoy it. But I personally love it. How about you?
Yeah, you have to have fun with it too. And people feel it too. And that's when they start engaging with you, is when you are having fun with it. It challenges me. And that's why I also like doing it. I try to force myself to do one a day, because it makes me get creative. It makes me think of new ideas, and it's fun. And it's funny because every once in a while, TurboTax has reached out and offered me some money for a post before the Super Bowl. And it was like, it was something I don't normally do, the style that they wanted me to do. And it was like one of those this or that videos where you go right or you go left and you got to choose something. And it's pretty famous on TikTok. But I sat there and I'm like, I have no clue what I'm going to do. But I just started doing it. And I grabbed my kids. I brought my kids in it. And it ended up being, it was only like 30 minutes to do it. And it ended up being like amazing. Like, I had a great time with my kids. It was hilarious. I can't wait to post it. And it just got me thinking. So it just challenges me. And that's why I love it as well.
I agree with you. There's a creative element to it that's so much fun. And it's like a form of self-expression, right? Just having fun with it. Like you said, figuring out what would be a fun way to tell that story in under a minute. I've been hyping TikTok nonstop to folks. And folks, I really encourage you. We've been putting up Chris's links. There's an amazing article on our site, Work It Daily, where we show not only his video with him and his brothers on Shark Tank, where they, by the way, they got offers from all the sharks and they ended up with Mark Cuban. And you can see that there. But also currently his top 10 most popular TikToks, he's growing leaps and bounds. That's probably going to change, but they're all in one spot. So be sure to check that article out. Be sure to go and like and follow him on all the social channels, but especially TikTok, because the content he's putting out there, it's amazing. It appeals to everybody. It's truly fascinating. So make sure that you go follow him there. I don't know where an hour goes, but apparently it's pretty quick, Chris. So, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, because at this point I'm thinking you're mentally checked out and you should be thinking about the Super Bowl. So, here's what I want you to do as I lose my voice. Tell everybody, gosh, I really am losing my voice. Tell everybody where you want them to go follow you, and final thoughts for them for today.
Yeah, so check me out at Chris Gronkowski on pretty much every social media platform possible. We do have a cool channel called The Gronks on YouTube. It's something that we started. My brother retired, and that used to kind of be our way to get together as a family. Was going to the game. So instead, we made this channel where we do different events together, and it was really cool. And it started to take off, and then he decided to go back to football. So we still post on there, and there'll be a lot more coming for sure. But check me out there as well if you're on YouTube, and that will be a lot of fun. Check out the product at Ice Shaker. We're at Ice Shaker on all the social media handles as well, and iceshaker.com. And closing thoughts. Ooh, this is always a tough one. It's been fun today for sure. And thank you so much for having me on here. But my closing thoughts are just start today is what I would tell people. Just go on and post something, because like we said before, if you're not branding yourself, someone else is, and someone else is going to look at you, have no clue about you, and they're automatically going to assume something about you that you probably don't want them to assume. So go out there and have fun with it. Get some stuff up there, and you'll find your path. It'll come to you. And if you don't like it, it's just as easy as just stepping away from it as well. But it's something I never thought I'd like doing, and now I'm excited to post every single day. I'm coming up here, and I'm like, oh, I got 3 hours left in the day. I got to get a post up at some point. I got to think of something fun to engage with my audience. So if you're someone that's looking to grow your network, if you're trying to tell your story, just start somewhere, and you'll start to figure it out. You'll start to figure out what works, and just have fun with it.
I couldn't have said it better myself. That was perfect advice. Thank you so much for taking time to do this today. It was a great episode. Folks, remember, Chris and I are now on Clubhouse. If you're not on Clubhouse, go apply. They're opening up the memberships pretty fast. Every Wednesday, 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. We're on there talking about all sorts of stuff around really 10Xing your life, 10Xing your career and business and that sort of thing. So if you thought today was fun, come hang with us over on Clubhouse. Otherwise, you know where to find them. We'll publish all the links. You all are the best. You're the best audience ever. I can't even tell you. I loved your questions today. I loved your support of Chris. Cannot wait to see you next time on JT Talks Jobs. Remember what we always tell you. If you want to win, you got to work it daily. Bye, everyone.